Today, I'm going to give you a lesson on mental health. This was not originally part of the curriculum. It's not in your very ancient textbook, but I have had many students over the years request this, either because they are dealing with mental health issues of their own, or because they're looking to go into the field and want to have vocabulary to go with that. So I have honored that request. I think it's really important for us to talk about mental health and to understand some of the terms that are being used both in ASL and in English, and so that we can be sensitive to those who experience these. So we're going to go through these mostly alphabetically, but not quite. So first, we're going to talk about addiction. The sign is addiction. It's an X hand shape, palm in at the side of your cheek. It looks like the sign recent, except it's got a bigger movement. Really, the origin of that sign is the idea of being hooked, like a fish, right? It's a fish hook stuck in their gills, hooked, addiction. So you might have an alcohol addiction, it might be a drug addiction. There's all sorts of things you can be addicted to, including your phone, so addiction. So again, recent tends to tap, addiction's just one big movement. Next we have anorexia. Anorexia is a mental disorder where people decide not to eat, maybe because they are feeling conscious about their weight or whatever, but it's the idea that they are so opposed, they're so afraid of gaining weight that they refuse to eat food. So that's what the sign looks like. Food, push away. With that goes the idea of bulimia. Bulimia is also a mental disorder related to food. That's where you eat because your body just screams so bad you eat, but then you make yourself throw up so that you don't process those calories. So bulimia. Next we have anxiety. You'll see a couple different signs for anxiety. This is the sign to be scared, so anxiety, it's kind of you're always scared, right? And we'll talk about the grammar behind that next week. I've also seen anxiety. It's kind of this idea that what's going on inside you doesn't match. Anxiety. Next is autism. Autism, it's different than autism, okay? So autism, a sign you'll see fairly often is autism. It's the idea that your focus is on yourself, autism. A little more positive, more recent sign you will see is autism. So instead of participating with other people, you tend to just participate with yourself, tend to turn inward. So autism or autism. Audism, that is the discrimination or oppression of deaf people, and that's autism. That's different. A-U-D-I-S-M. This is different than A-U-T-S-I-M. You will see it finger spelled as well. Next, we're going to talk about depression. So think about the sign for feelings, right? Maybe you're excited, so that one moves up. Maybe you're sensitive, that kind of moves back and forth. Depression moves down. It's a negative emotion, so it moves down. I've also seen the sign depression. So you can use a feeling hand shape, depression, or a 5 hand shape, depression. With that goes the sign bipolar. So sometimes you're excited and sometimes you're depressed, and then you switch back and forth. The term bipolar, think about like the Earth. It has the North Pole and the South Pole, and those are very extremes from one end to the other. So that's why bipolar comes from. So you have one extreme or the other, bipolar. Next is epilepsy. We talked about the sign seizure. So epilepsy is often think seizure, epilepsy. Next, we're going to talk about narcissism. So to tell you this story, I have to give you some background in Greek mythology. Once there was this gorgeous young man named Narcissus who walked around the world breaking hearts because everyone would fall in love with how gorgeous he was, and he would spurn them all and say, no, I'm not interested. Well, Nemesis, the goddess of retribution, decided she'd get a little payback. So one day she led him to a pool of water where he looked down into the surface and saw this gorgeous young man looking up at him. And he fell madly in love and just stared into the water and stared into the water, only to realize it was his own reflection and his love was never going anywhere. So, I love you, but narcissists only love themselves. So it's I love you, palm in front of their face. And so how that manifests now in terms of a mental disorder is the idea that you are So interested in taking care of yourself that you have no empathy for other people. That's a narcissist, that they're only interested in themselves and will take care of themselves even if it means hurting others. And the last one we're going to talk about today is schizophrenia. Old sign you'll see sometimes schizophrenia, but the new sign schizophrenia. So that's an S with palm to the side, and then that's a 1 here from the back of your hand, and it makes a 7, schizophrenia. Now, there are plenty more signs for different mental disorders, for mental health issues. I will give you a link to a much more extensive list created by a mental health interpreter. But keep in mind too that different regions and different people are going to use different signs. So these might be, they're not always the same everywhere you go, but hopefully that'll give you what you need.